here she comes, and she has the totes.
And look, there's little Jane come to help her.
Little Jane, the woman is 26 years old.
I know, but she will always be little Jane to me. It was so sweet when she was little and she would come in and lean against me while watching her grandparents decorate at Christmas. She was such a tiny little thing.
Well, she must have learned a thing or two from them. Jane really does have an eye for decorating. I am so glad she works here now. I do want to look my best for Christmas.
I do too. Oh, look, she is unpacking the boxes.
Oh, look, Jane. Look what I've found at the bottom of this tote, an old toy train. Why, this reminds me of the train that your great-grandfather used to use in the window display when I was a child. Do you think that we could make use of it?
Oh, yes, Grandma. It is so quaint. I think that we could use it as a centerpiece of our display, actually. Did Great-Grandpa make it?
Actually, he very likely did. Back then, he crafted many of the toys sold in this store. His father taught him wood carving from a very young age. Children and families would come from miles around at Christmas time to stroll down the streets of Baltimore and enjoy the displays in the shop windows. I must say that I did hear that your great-grandpa's was one of the favorites.
That is so true. Do you remember? This store would be packed and the little children would press their little faces up to the glass and stand there staring mesmerized.
I do remember, but my favorite memory is that of those three sisters. Do you remember?
How could I ever forget?
That must have been before my time. What happened?
Yes, this was about 3 windows ago, before little Billy accidentally threw his baseball through.
Please, let's not speak about baseballs. Every time I see one, I almost become a nervous wreck. Even a baseball cap on a little boy starts me shaking.
I'm sorry. I don't blame you. Well, these 3 little sisters were very respectful of the front window. They loved to come and stare in at the toys. The only thing was that one of the sisters was blind.
Grandma, look what I found. It's a laminated newspaper article from a Boston newspaper about the store.
Oh my, I had almost forgotten about that. There were these 3 little sisters who had come to look in the store window one Christmas way back in 1879, when your great-grandpa was just a boy and his father owned the store. Well, one of the sisters, if I remember correctly, was blind, and so her sisters were doing their best to describe all of the wonders of the toys and the Christmas decorations in the window. And it just so happened that a young newspaper reporter was walking by and was intrigued by their conversation. He came over to listen and overheard their descriptions of the different marvels in the window and noted how the sisters found it a difficult task to adequately describe what they were seeing to their sister. It must have made quite an impression on him, because it ended up as an article in the paper.
That is not the only thing that ended up having an impression on him because of those sisters.
What do you mean?
Well, that story in the Boston paper was read by none other than D.L. Moody, the famous evangelist.
Yes, D.L. Moody was preaching right here in Baltimore one time, and that young reporter decided to go and hear him preach. But it wasn't because he was honestly interested in what Moody had to say.
No?
No, he was not a believer, and he believed that all of Moody's stories and anecdotes were fabricated, all made up, and he intended to expose Moody in his paper.
What happened?
Well, unbeknownst to Moody, the reporter went to hear the preacher one night, and it just so happened that Moody told this very story as an illustration. Moody likened the story to the difficulty that Moody found in trying to tell others about Jesus. He said that although he could tell them all about Jesus, they remained blind to his beauty and so didn't long for him at all. But if they accepted Jesus, then Jesus opened their eyes and suddenly they could see Jesus in, as Moody said, all his loveliness and grace.
That reporter must have been so shocked.
He was. He went right up to Moody after the meeting and asked him where he had gotten that story. Moody told him that he had read it in a Boston paper, and the newspaper man told him that the story had actually taken place right there in Baltimore. and that he himself had been the gentleman who had overheard the children's conversation. In fact, Moody's sermon and use of the story impacted him so greatly that he accepted Jesus and became one of the first converts of Moody's gospel meetings in Baltimore.
What? That's amazing! How do you know about this?
Well, two ladies who were also at Moody's meeting overheard Moody and the gentleman talking and told another lady the story later in the week while they were all shopping in this very store. They thought that it was so interesting that Moody happened to tell the story on the very night the newspaperman was there, and the very night that he was trying to discredit Moody by saying that his stories were not true.
That's ironic.
A little more than ironic, I would say. I would say it is obviously God at work.
Just you wait, Window. You will be amazed at what you hear in this store.
Wow, Grandma, that is quite the story. I wish I could have been a fly on the wall to hear how those little girls were trying to describe everything to their sister.
I know. I often think that if only these walls could talk, what wonderful stories they might have to tell us.